Thank you. Just waiting for confirmation. We're live now. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning and welcome to the decision day of myself, the Executive Lead Member for Children's Services and the Executive Member for Education, Councillor Steve Forster. These decision days are being broadcast in one session live on YouTube via the County Council website. We both have another number of items to make decisions on this morning, but before we go into the full agenda, I would like to welcome Councillor Jan Warwick, who wishes to speak on behalf of item 6 this morning. Councillor Warwick, would you like to take the floor now and speak?
Yes, thank you so much, Councillor Chad and Councillor Foster. This is an item that follows on in your decision day, but I'm speaking to it at the start of this meeting. And it's the investment in the Shepherd's Down Special School, which is in the village of Compton in my ward division area. And I just wanted to say a thanks to the team because I know this has been a tricky planning decision. There's been several expansions to the Shepherd's Down School over the years, and I believe planning permission is now granted for this current expansion. It's going to involve a lot of work, but I just wanted to pass on my thanks, Stuart, to your teams and the teams within planning who've handled this with great care, and there's been a lot of consultation that's gone on in the recent months ahead of that planning decision. What I would say is the residents around the Shepherd's Down School area are very supportive of the school and come to their open days and their fetes. But we've had to be mindful. There are several residents. There are 14 houses that actually share the site. And that's where we probably need to be very careful because those residents live very close to the site. So when the demolition work starts and the car park is expanded, I think we just need to be mindful of those residents and make sure they're consulted as work sort of continues. So 14 sort of properties that share the site. And some of that worker accommodation is key worker accommodation. So we've got people on night shifts. So I just think we need to be mindful of that. The other big issue there, and one of the issues that I think this expansion will solve is the parking can be very congested during sort of school pickup and drop-off times. So expanding the car park is fantastic. I hope that will sort of alleviate the congestion around those routes. And one thing we're hoping to achieve is to improve the pedestrian access because some of the children do actually walk to school or are helped to walk to school. And that's an important part of starting off their day in a calm way. So we're looking to find a safe pedestrian route through that site that doesn't sort of conflict with the car parking. The other small thing is the fencing. I think the residents would be really appreciated if we could make sure their fencing is maintained and improved. And the other issue on that site is the school grounds maintenance. Some of the hedges and bushes haven't had attention. There's an amazing willow tree that sort of is actually in the school grounds, but actually drapes over the residents' properties. They love that tree, but it does need some maintenance because the branches reach the ground from time to time. So that's all I wanted to say. So hugely supportive, but I just think mindful of the residents as the work takes place. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor Warwick. And I saw Councillor Forster busily making notes whilst you were talking. So Councillor Forster, I assume that you will reflect on Councillor Warwick's comments when it comes to your decision later in the meeting.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
I will. Councillor Chad, Councillor Warwick, I'd just like to comment how appreciative officers and I are of the work that Councillor Warwick has put in, explaining some of the issues so that we understand those, and those absolutely will be reflected as the work proceeds.
Thank you.
Thank you. So if I bring us back to the agenda for today, the first item on my agenda is the Hampshire Youth Justice Service and the Youth Justice Plan 25-26. And I believe we have Alice who is going to present this morning for us.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for having me. Yes, just to run through the Youth Justice Plan, it sets out our strategic, objectives for the coming year and reflects on the priorities in which we achieved last year. We had Select last week, and there was some reflections in the performance area of the report in terms of graphs and making sure they were really clear in the text, which has now been amended. So hopefully that is updated, and it also has been updated at the end to reflect that hopefully it'll be signed off today, ready for publication.
Thank you, Alice. It's really good to see those amendments that have been put in place. Councillor Forster, did you have any comments on this? I know we've been through it in our chairman's briefing, and obviously it went to Select last week. But I don't know if there's anything you want to say.
Nothing additional. I think the Select meeting was really informative. It is available on the council stream if anyone's interested. A lot was covered there, and I'd urge people to have a listen to it. It was really interesting.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments about this agenda item today? No? So if I take us to the recommendations, and the recommendations are that the executive lead member for Children's Services considers the Hampshire Youth Justice Plan for 25-26 and recommends that it's presented to full council for approval. I'm really happy to approve that recommendation, and I look forward to it coming to full council. Thank you so much, Alice, for all your hard work on that report. It really is a great report.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
I move then to agenda item 2, which is Childcare Sufficiency Assessment 2025, and Peter is presenting this today.
Good morning, councillors, and good morning, colleagues. Thank you very much. I'll give you a brief oversight of our childcare sufficiency assessment. So the purpose of the report is to demonstrate to the lead member our sufficiency status at the moment, matched against our requirements of the Childcare Act 2006. The headline is that we are now publishing this in a data dashboard format on our website, so it's much more accessible to parents, providers and other professionals to access the information about childcare sufficiency. The recommendation will be for you to note the content of the report. So sections 3 to 5 give us an executive summary, and we've included a quick reference table so you can see where things are going up and where things are going down in a visual way, and I'll take you through a few of those highlights as we go through. This is reflective. This recovers the period of 24-25. This was a time where we were in the middle of the childcare entitlements expansion. So just to give you some context, the report does highlight that we still have a very high quality childcare market. There has been a drop from 95% of good and above outcomes to 91%. And when we dig into the data on that, it's childminders is the area of concern. Group-based settings are still very, very high. So there's some work for us to do with our childminders. The report does note that the expansion alongside our local and national shortage of the childcare workforce, of staff in the childcare workforce, is really challenging at the time. So expanding at a time where there is insufficient staff to do so is one of our greatest challenges. We also, a theme of the report throughout is about access for our most disadvantaged groups and how the unintended consequences of the expansion is potentially limiting the accessibility of some of our disadvantaged groups, and that's something we really need to work hard to turn that curve. Sections 6 to 12 of the report give you the contextual information regarding our duties and the entitlements, and also introduce wraparound care for the first time, where we are providing support before and after school. The sections 10 onwards give some highlights of the findings. We have a falling population still in the 0 to 4 year age range, which has helped with our sufficiency, where there's it's helped soften the blow on that a little bit. And it also shows that we have 1,291 providers across Hampshire claiming early years education funding, which is obviously a very high number. Roughly half of those are childminders, the rest are group-based settings. We also highlight that school-based nurseries have started. We've always had school-based nurseries, but there is now funding available for new school-based nurseries, and 6 of those started within the year, funded by the Department for Education. Key findings on the workforce show that we have 8,500 staff, but we have a deficit of 816 staff to be precise. We need from September the 1st onwards, so now, if we are actually going to reach our statutory duty and those provide sufficient places for children and their families. Section 19 to 21 talks about the take-up of the entitlements. Headlines here are we are paying providers to provide childcare for 9-month-old to 2-year-olds for the first time ever in history, and that brought in 14,000 children being receiving funding through the 0 to 2-year-old funding. So some very, very big numbers there. Sections 22 to 25 of the report talk about our vulnerable children and the unintended consequences, where the expansion of childcare funding for working parents has basically taken up the capacity, and therefore those who get their entitlements later on from the age of 2, by the time they get to settings, there are insufficient places for them to take those up. So that's a real concern for us. It's dropped significantly. That is one of our, that's what we're really focused on, and it's not just Hampshire, that is a national trend, and we're talking to the DfE literally daily about how we change that curve significantly. We also talk about the increase in access to funding for groups. So we have a 20% increase in children claiming early years pupil premium, 18% on disability access. All those figures are going up for those additional funding sources because of the additional capacity within settings. We also have earlier identification of children's emerging needs. So things like a pressure on portage referrals is being noted as well. Section 26 of the report onwards talks about wraparound care and how we have taken our percentage take up from schools, from primary schools being 54% of primary schools having full wraparound care. We've got that to 92% and currently a little bit more than that. So that's very, very good news. And we noted, the report notes the new rollout of the Breakfast Club provision, which is a universal provision for all children attending primary schools. We have an action plan within the plan, mostly focused on how we provide for our more vulnerable groups, but also how we address the recruitment and retention issues that we have in Hampshire. And in the financial section, we note how we used our capital grant funding of 2.8 million to support 59 providers to build additional capacity in the early years age group, and 33 providers to expand their capacity with capital funding for wraparound. So the conclusions of our report is that we still do have a high quality market in Hampshire. We technically have an excess of 400 places in Hampshire, but being that Hampshire is a terrific scale and size, those places aren't always in exactly the right locations we need them. So in reality, we need just over 2,100 additional places to meet our sufficiency requirements going forward. And as we said, our focus now is on our vulnerable groups and their access to their entitlements. That's my report.
Thank you, Peter, and thank you so much for such an amazing and in-depth report and for presenting it today. I'm really pleased that we have got that action plan and we know exactly what we need to be doing and where we're going to go and where those points are. I think the focus on our most vulnerable groups is absolutely what we need to be doing. We need to get those young people into those settings to help develop their young minds and them as individuals. So I think that's a really good focus. Great success story with wraparound care. That's brilliant. I think and it's going to be interesting to see how the Breakfast Club universal provision is rolled out and how schools intend on doing that, and I know that we will support our schools with questions that they may have in regards to that. So I am really happy with pleased with the report. It is a really good story, but it does highlight where we do need to focus, which is always important. Do I have any other questions or comments about this item at all? No? Okay.
Yeah, just briefly, I reiterate all your comments. The work put in by officers and the report are absolutely brilliant. Now we have to make sure that government provides us with the funding because it's an ongoing issue that the funding and government support is somewhat lacking. We do hope with all the work that government is doing and talking about, we actually start seeing some of that come through in terms of allowing us the flexibility or more flexibility and providing sufficient funding.
Absolutely. Brilliant. So on that note, I will take us to the recommendations then for today. And it is recommended that the Executive Lead Member of Children's Services notes the context of the childcare sufficiency assessment provided in Appendix A. I'm very happy to note that report and approve that recommendation. Thank you very much, Peter.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is feedback on the non-statutory consultation on the amalgamation of the Federation of Ryder Infant and Junior Schools with Park Community School, and Richard is presenting this one.
Thank you, Councillor Chad. As you say, this is a report on the outcome of the non-statutory consultation and a recommendation that we move to a period of public notice. This was a consultation undertaken on the future of Riders Infant and Junior and Park at the request of the governing body, following challenges that the primary provision on the rider site, Riders Infant and Junior, have had over a number of years. Riders Infant had an academy order placed on it in January 24, which has subsequently been revoked at the request of the county council and upon a change of government. But the challenges down there are with the primary offer and the quality of the primary offer and numbers of children leaving the area to access primary provision elsewhere. Our intention is through this amalgamation to create an all-through school led by Park. So technically you would see the closure of the infant and junior school and the expansion of the age range of Park in due course, but maintaining the primary offer on the Riders site. So we're not removing any provision from the local area. There were some concerns. So we held 2 drop-in events, little attendance, but there has been some concerns raised just generally around parking, most probably no change in reality because of the changes we are proposing. There's been some concerns raised by the local primary schools that if we increase the size of the primary offer down there beyond 1 FE, it would have an impact on the children attending their school, so it would be detrimental to the surrounding schools in the planning area. Our proposals would see a primary phase offer of 30 on the Riders site. Now, it may be that grows over time, but that's a position we need to reach and not start from. So that is right and proper that's where we begin this, subject to future decisions. We have had challenges recruiting to Riders Infant and Junior in their current state. That's been stabilised through the support of Park, so that's a positive. And obviously, if we create an all-through school, we reduce that need of transition and the challenges that come with that. Equally accepting that we need to work with staff so they can teach across all key stages and work through an all-through school, which they won't have experience in. So it was at the request of the schools. We've undertaken the non-statutory phase with limited feedback. It's right and proper now that we seek to move into a statutory period of consultation that would seek to create an all-through school under the leadership of Park across the 2 sites.
Thank you, Richard, for all your work on this and for all your team's work as well. I completely understand the position of where we are with this, and also think that what the proposal for a 1 form entry primary is absolutely the best place to start with. I can understand the fears and concerns of those other local schools if it was anything different. But as you say, that could potentially change with time, and that would be something for a discussion at a much later period of time. I personally don't see any reason why we wouldn't go for the approval for public publication of the public notice at this, but I don't know if there's any other questions or comments from anyone on this item at all. No. Okay, so that takes me nicely into the recommendations, that the approval is given to the publication of the public notice to amalgamate Riders Infants and Junior Schools and Park Community School in Havant with effect from the 1st of September 2026. I'm happy to approve that recommendation. Thank you so much, Richard, for your report today. So the next item on the agenda is item 4, and that's permission to consult on the proposed changes to school transport policy. And Cheryl, I think you're presenting this one this morning.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, everyone. So I'm covering 2 reports today, one on holding a public consultation on the school transport policy and another on the post-16 transport policy. So if it's okay, I'll go through both just as one.
Can we take them separately? Because
Yeah.
I need to declare an interest in the post-16 one, and it's not going to, I have to get Councillor Forster to deputise that decision for me. So if we can take the changes to school transport policy first, and then I'll deputise to Councillor Forster.
Of course, yes. So for the school transport policy, it states at the moment that both consultations would launch on the 20th of October, but it's now scheduled to run from the 3rd of November until the 7th of December, and that's just due to the rescheduling of this decision day. It still meets the required consultation period of 25 days within term time. And just to note, there are no financial savings associated with this consultation. The changes that were agreed at the Future Services consultation earlier this year are already in the policy, so we won't be consulting on those, but anyone who is undertaking the consultation will see that they're already there. The most significant change here in this one is to cease an on-demand spare capacity seat scheme, and this is outlined in paragraphs 12 to 23. And also just to note that in paragraph 23, we state we would continue to use excess capacity where we have it in exceptional circumstances. So that's where individual circumstances of a child would merit this. A comparatively small number of children use spare capacity seats at the moment. And the reasons for this change include the fact that quite an optimistic and often unrealistic expectation is set for parents that children would receive a spare capacity seat, when actually only about 1 in 5 spare seat applicants actually do receive them. There's also another set of changes included in the report, which are more about updating the policy for clarity and to reflect current operational practice. And there would be no changes to eligibility as a result of those. Appendix B contains the before and after text for anyone to read through. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Cheryl. Are there any questions or comments on this item from anyone? No. I'm really happy with this report. I think it's a good report, and I thank you and the team for that. It's been made clear. I think Councillor Forster and I have both been through this numerous times, so I'm going to go straight to the recommendation for this one. And the recommendation is that the Executive Lead Member for Children's Services gives approval to proceed with the public consultation on the proposed changes to the school transport policy, with a further report setting out the findings of the consultation to be presented at a future Executive Member decision day. I'm happy to approve that recommendation. Thank you. So the next item on my agenda is permission to consult on the post-16 transport policy for 26-27 academic year. But I need to declare an interest in this item due to my position as the governor at Farnborough College of Technology. The decision for this item has been deputed to Councillor Forster to take, so I'm now going to hand over to Councillor Forster for the rest of the meeting. Thank you.
Councillor Chad, thank you for handing over to me and declaring that interest. I'm happy to take item 5, the permission to consult on post-16 transport policy for the 26-27 academic year. So thank you. And I think, Cheryl, you're taking us through the additional points on this, please.
Thank you, Chair. So for this one, again, consultation will be launching on the 3rd of November rather than the 20th of October. And again, there are no financial savings associated with this consultation proposal. So we are required by law to review and publish our post-16 transport policy by the 31st of May every year, and this would cover the following academic year. And as that's a legal requirement, we go to public consultation annually as part of this process. Again, as with the school transport policy, the changes agreed as a result of future services have already been included in the draft, so we won't consult upon those further, although we do expect we may have some comments about them as part of the consultation. There are very few changes to the current post-16 policy, which we've listed in paragraphs 12 and 17 of the report. They include clearer wording for appeals in paragraph 12, the introduction of a quick guide in paragraph 13 and shown at the end of Appendix A, minor updates such as links in paragraph 14 and an update to parental contributions at paragraph 15. And again, there's a before and after table of the changes that can be found in Appendix A. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Cheryl. I think it's really good that we're going to see those wording changes and the quick guide, because that will make it easier for parents and everyone to understand exactly what it is. We've had some queries and that has been incorporated. Are there any questions relating to this item? No questions or comments? Okay, the recommendation is that approval is given to proceed with the public consultation on the proposed changes to the policy, with further approval to determine the post-16 transport policy statement 26-27 academic year to be presented at a future executive member decision day. I'm happy to approve that recommendation as written and look forward to seeing that on the 3rd of November. That does give good time for people to respond. And I'd urge those who are interested to respond to it. We have a history of always taking into account those responses, and they're welcomed. So that is fully approved. Thank you, Cheryl. That's much appreciated. Thank you for the work that you've done on this. That leads us now into the next item on the agenda, item 6, and the start of my own executive decision day. So welcome to all those who are still here. We've got 3 items on my agenda. The first one is item 6, the additional teaching accommodation at Shepherdsdown Special School in Compton, which Councillor Warwick spoke about earlier. I think that one is Colin, you're taking us through that, please.
Yes, good morning. Thank you, Chairman, and good morning, everybody. The purpose of this report is to seek your spend approval to the proposals for the additional teaching accommodation at Shepherdsdown Special School for pupils with special educational needs at the total cost of 2.1 million. The school currently provides education for up to 190 children aged between 4 and 11 with a wide range of needs. And this project provides additional accommodation for the same cohort of children. The project is located on the former College House site, which is directly adjacent to Shepherdsdown School in Compton. It was formerly leased to Eastleigh College and has remained vacant for some 2 years. And this project seeks to optimise the use of that land and asset through the retention of the most suitable building and the demolition of the existing College House, which is not suitable for use for education purposes for SEND. So the project comprises the alterations and refurbishment of the existing modular building to provide the teaching accommodation, and the demolition of the house, the College House building, with the formation of external play areas, new car parking and new drop-off and access arrangements. The project was included in the capital programme in June 2025 with a budget of 2.1 million. And the report was originally drafted saying that the recommendation was conditional upon planning permission being secured. I can confirm that planning permission was indeed granted last week, so that that has resolved that. The Subject to your decision today, the work would be expected to start on site in January and complete next summer. Addressing the points raised by Councillor Warwick, the team are very mindful of the adjacency of the residents to the construction site, and I can only provide our assurance that the team and the contractor will do all that we can, working with the contractor, to minimise that disruption during the project. We have already set out a phasing of the sequence of the works to ensure that the half the car park is built and the new access is built as first phase to ease any issues there. We are looking to offer a solution to the fence between this property and the adjoining residents and improve screening, which can be accommodated within the current scope of the project, but will require a non-material amendment to the planning consent, which should be straightforward. And in terms of improved pedestrian access, we are going to be carrying out a feasibility study to see what the options and viability are for improving that. And obviously that lies beyond the boundary of the site and beyond the scope of the project at the moment. So the recommendation, Chairman, is that you give spend approval to spend 2.1 million on these project proposals for the additional accommodation at the school. Thank you.
Well, then, thank you very much. Good to hear that that you're mindful of the points that Councillor Warwick raised, in particular the fencing, screening, and the pedestrian access, which were key points. And as I mentioned earlier on, it's appreciated that Councillor Warwick spent some time with us all going through those. Are there any questions or comments on this point from members? No? Okay. There's a recommendation which is detailed that I give approval to spend 2.1 million on the project proposals for teaching accommodation at the special school in the Shepherd's End for pupils with special education needs. The recommendation said conditional upon planning permission being secured, but as Colin said, that has now been secured. There's a minor variation which will be applied for separately. So subject to that going through, I'm happy to approve the recommendation with that last section removed. Thank you very much indeed, Colin. Thank you very much for work on that. Leads us on to item 7, which is one that will affect lots and lots of people. School term and holiday dates for the 2029-30 academic year. Good to plan ahead. Nick, are you taking us through this?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Forster. So the purpose of this report is to inform you on the need to decide the school term and holiday dates for the academic year 2029-2030. In essence, the local authority has a responsibility to determine the school year for community and voluntary controlled schools as the employer. There is a need to determine 195 teaching days that, when insets are included, becomes 190 pupil days or 380 sessions, each session being approximately half a day. Typically, there are some limitations on setting a school year. Things that you have to consider are how far Christmas is from the beginning of September, can lead to a long autumn term. The changing Easter is always a limitation on setting the school year. The first May bank holiday always leads to at least a half week somewhere within the calendar. We always have to consider the second May bank holiday and where exams are positioned. And then the fact that unions have expressed a preference in Hampshire for there to typically be 3 weekends and 2 full weeks at Christmas and Easter. So that can mean that balancing terms can be a little bit tricky on occasion. Particular things to note for 2029-30, Christmas is on a Tuesday, and in order to try and avoid half weeks and the school's preference to return late in January, has led us to proposing a 21st of December finish, which does feel slightly late, but bearing in mind, again, avoiding those half weeks and that slightly later return in January. That's why that finish has been proposed. The late Easter means that Easter Monday is actually the last day of the proposed Easter holidays, but that always does lead to a shorter summer term 1. And again, the only way to avoid a half week in July, which would be the preference of schools, would be to shorten Easter or Christmas. However, bearing in mind that preference for 2 weeks at Easter and Christmas. That is why we've ended up with a proposal where we go into a couple of days of a week in July before that concludes. You'll see the comments from the Schools Union Group and the consultation with Hampshire Schools in Appendix 1. And whilst all those comments were considered, on balance, the proposed term dates were not adjusted, as it was considered that they still continue to provide the best balance overall, bearing in mind those earlier limitations that I listed. So ultimately, the recommendation for you is that you approve the school term and holiday dates for the school year 29-30 as set out in Appendix 2 of the report.
Nick, thank you very much. Do I have any questions or comments on the school term dates? No, shaking heads. Thank you. Nick, I'm sure this is not an easy one, since regrettably we can't move Christmas, Easter and some of those other dates, which means we have to work around them. And it is, as you rightly point out, a delicate balancing act when you've got the needs of parents, teaching staff, the unions and so many others to come up with the right dates. But at least this gives plenty of notice so that people can plan properly and that we end up delivering the best teaching solution for our children. And the 190 days that is required. There is a little bit of flexibility left to the schools, who of course can set their own inset dates, and that is completely within their remit, which does give them some ability to make adjustments if they see appropriate, subject of course to working around their own staff. But on the basis of what's proposed and having read this in detail, I am happy to take the recommendation to approve I approve the term and holiday dates for 2029 and 30, and to approve that as written in the report. I thank you for the work done on that and members for their contributions. Thank you, Nick.
Thank you.
Thanks. That takes us on to the last item for today, the additional specialist provision, new and expanding resource provisions, item 8. Who's taking us through this one, please?
I am, Steve, as Natalie is otherwise engaged in a select committee meeting. So this report seeks approval to open up the published public notices to open up a final phase of consultation on a number of new resource provision in mainstream schools. Those provisions all relate to autism. They're at Hamble Primary School in Eastleigh, Hamble School Secondary in Eastleigh, Harrow Way Community School in Andover, and Stanmore Primary School in Winchester, and then a change of provision at Moorlands Primary School in Havant. They have 2 provisions down there at Moorlands, and it's to increase the autism offer, and reduce the language and communications offer to meet continued need in relation to autism. This is all work that further supports our work in delivering specialist SEND provision into our mainstream schools. It's from a finance revenue perspective, it's important to us. This would reduce revenue pressure on the high needs block by some £3 million, and it significantly reduces our reliance on the independent and non-maintained sector for these types of places. There will be capital costs related to all of these projects should they be approved post-public notice period. That will all be funded from the Children's Services Capital Programme, and I will include the cost of the works subject to their final approval in the January Capital Programme report going to Councillor Chan.
Richard, thank you very much. Members, any questions on this item? No? Okay, thank you. Really good to see yet a further 50 plus places coming forward, and the benefits to the children from this, let alone the financial benefit to the authority, will be most welcome. Fully appreciate that it's got a few more hoops to go through yet in terms of approving the capital spend, etc. But really good to see this process continuing as part of our overall commitment for significant increase in places for children with SEND. So I am happy to take the recommendation for approval to undertake the statutory consultations and the publications of public notices for all schools and settings listed under section 2 of the report, and I'm happy to fully approve that as written. I'd like to thank everyone for attendance today and the contributions made, in particular to thank all those officers who put a huge amount of work in as usual. I think that brings us to the end of today's decision day. So if I can ask you to please end the webcast, that would be appreciated.